Margarit Davtian. It is wonderful to be speaking with you on the Gentle Rebel podcast. Massive welcome to you.
Thank you. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, I've been really enjoying listening to you on a number of podcasts, exploring coaching and all sorts of stuff around, like cults and that kind of
Yeah.
vibe. And reading your Conscious Revolution blog, really great, just insights and wisdom. And I think you've recently returned from a social media hiatus. What inspired the break
Yes.
and why did you come back?
So I kind of just take breaks from social media once a year, and I recommend everyone do that because it gives you a chance, especially the kind of work that I'm doing, which is like just so much debunking, and I have to absorb a lot of content that is not nice to
Right.
constantly like expose myself to. So I take breaks so that I can just kind of decompress and also just integrate everything. There's always like, I mean, you know this, especially in an industry like the coaching industry, there's an online discourse around it. There's just so much constantly coming out and so much information, and we're sort of at a place where we're figuring it out as a society, just talking about things that we don't really have clear-cut answers to. And so it's good to kind of take a break and then just integrate everything and see where you land on a lot of the opinions and ideas, six months later, because it does change, it does evolve. It's a part of like the evolution of thought. So that's kind of where I was at when I took a break. And
Mm.
also, speaking of the topic today on the coaching industry, I got a little bit burnt out, to be honest, because I've been doing that. I've been doing this for a number of years. And I'm kind of at a place where I'm like, I feel like I've done my part. I feel like I've done enough. And I'm ready to sort of like evolve from that space. So I'm just now at a crossroads of just figuring out what is calling me in my content creation now.
Right.
And that's gonna take some time as well.
Mm.
So that's kind of where I'm
Yeah,
at. So I'm back from my hiatus, but not really, but I'm here.
exploring. Yeah, it sounds like a really healthy rhythm to get into, because especially I think it's social media algorithms and everything just suck you into rabbit holes, and it sounds like a great way to just withdraw from that and protect yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You can't help but fall into echo chambers on social media. It's designed that way. So,
Yeah, totally. And as you say, the way that, or the things that you're exploring and the debunking and all of that, which hopefully I don't want to sort of drag you back into all of that if you're
no, that's okay. That's okay. I'm well aware of the premise for our conversation, and I'm still really excited about talking about it because
Mm,
it's something that I'm still really passionate about. So when I meet someone who is interested and engaged in it, I'm all for it. I like these conversations a lot, and I think they're very, very important. So I just want to
mm,
like acknowledge you for reaching out and having and holding this space for it, because
mm.
my vision is that we're going to have these conversations across the board, and we need to have more of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and this, I mean, it's come out of several conversations that I've been having over the past really 6 months or so, and you were brought to my attention by my friend Adam Kovalek, who I was talking to about ethicality and coaching, and he said, have you seen this Ethics for Coaching website, and sent it to me, and I was like, whoa, this is exactly what is needed, this kind of thing, and you've been involved in setting that up and supporting it, I believe. So, yeah, maybe start there. Like, what is that site, Ethics for Coaching, and what drew you to that work, I suppose?
So Ethics for Coaching is it's an education platform, and the mission is to promote safety and professionalism and ethics in the coaching industry. It's not at all tied to like the government. It's not a board. It's nothing like that. It's just a group of people who came together and was like, let's just put some ideas down on paper and and open it up for conversation. You know, not as coming from a place of like, we're experts in ethics. I mean, like I said, these are conversations that we're still figuring out as a society. And so the intention was to just kind of have a space for it and just come up with some ideas based on, you know, some of the people on the team were coaches, therapists, lawyers, consumer rights activists. So we kind of just put our heads together and we're like, let's come up with just pillars that make sense to apply in the coaching industry and see what people think about it.
Mm.
And it just started out as a handbook. So the free handbook that we have, the 4 pillars of ethical coaching, where we've identified the 4 kind of main pillars based on um, marketing and psychological science and just other kind of ethics boards, more official ethics boards, because every single industry has an ethics board. And I know that the biggest one, which is the International Coaching Federation, that's kind of like the largest. I don't know, you're in England, so I'm not it's international though, right? I'm
Yeah,
sure you,
ascribe
yeah.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they do outline some ethics, which I appreciate, but like there's no one enforces it. But in every other industry, there is a board of people who will come around and audit to make sure you're in line. And if you're not, there are some repercussions of that. There's consequences of that. You can get your license taken away. And I understand why people are very resistant towards that because there is a lot of bureaucracy. So again, these are the conversations that we just wanted to encourage in the industry because there is no clear-cut answer. And I think that it's also very exciting to be in such a free space where we can kind of create our own rules around it,
Mm.
right? It's so unregulated that it really just takes just people to care about it and have these conversations and um, trial and error our way kind of through it. So it started with this pillars of ethical coaching handbook that we put out where we outlined the 4 pillars, which is integrity, safety, inclusivity, and professionalism. And then we just created a website and it kind of became more of an educational platform. And we have a couple of blog posts on there. You know, the idea was to kind of start it out as a steering committee and then hand it off. I mean, it's a volunteer-based initiative. And there's absolutely no like outside funding involved. So we kind of got burnt out because it
Mm.
took a lot of work to even create it in the first place, a lot of unpaid labor. And then we were like, well, let's just kind of see what happens. There are people who have expressed interest in taking it on, you know, whether they're coaches or mainly coaches. We wanted because I myself I'm not a coach. My background is in consumer behavior. I know about ethical marketing. I'm not a coach though, and there were a couple coaches on it, but they got too busy. And the main few people that remained were not coaches, and we're like, you know what, this needs to be, coaches need to actually take this forward because it's their industry.
Mm,
No one's gonna care about it and take that kind of action except for people who are directly involved.
mm. I, and I think it really reflects the fact that it isn't just coaches who have set it up, and I really appreciate the fact that there are people from different fields,
Oh
legal,
yeah.
consumer behavior, as you say, and I think
Yeah.
that's really important because you have the bigger picture of ethics across the board. And another thing I really like about it is that it doesn't feel like it's just a set of rules to call people out and to say this is really bad. It's actually kind of support. It's like it seems to have a vision to support coaches, to support the coaching industry, so that it can do what it does best and it can really serve people in a positive way. And I think it's written in there that this guide is not meant to limit creative freedom or discourage aspiring coaches from practicing their unique craft. Rather, it's meant to support coaches to practice their craft with integrity, safety, inclusivity, and professionalism. And I find that, I don't know, that instills confidence in me that there's something that you can draw on to think, okay, I can build my practice or my various practices, whether it's the marketing aspect of the business and then the actual coaching practice, like you can ground it in good behavior, so to speak. And I think
Yeah.
I find that a real, like, it's a document of confidence that people can draw on, I think. Yeah.
Great. I'm so glad that that is the impression that you had. That's exactly what we were going for.
Mm, that's cool.
Mm.
And yeah, I'd love to just maybe go through those four pillars as we speak, like use it as a bit of a structure for our conversation, and then we can maybe explore some of the signs of sloppy practice, bad practice, outright scammy practice,
Hmm.
as we go. So so the first one is the integrity pillar,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it starts with marketing and advertising. Um, so yeah, just sort
Yeah.
of what's the thinking or the stuff within that part of that pillar?
So the main one that I think should be promoted and is not really present in the coaching industry is this idea of informed consent, which is about being transparent in your marketing and your sales so that the consumer knows exactly what they're getting. And I feel like, as a consumer rights advocate, anything that you purchase, you want to know as a consumer, what are you going to get out of that? What are the concrete sort of benefits um, for for the money that the investment that you're getting? What's your return on investment? And I feel like good marketing does a pretty solid job at outlining some of the and it's of course it's a little bit tricky with coaching because we're talking the benefits are psychological. It's not like a exchange of goods and goods. It's more of a service, and there's so much subjectivity in the benefits. But in terms of just the offering, at least,
Mm-hmm.
what is going like disclosing what's actually being offered, and there's a lot of like fumbling around it that I've seen in the coaching industry with number one, just not doing it at all, not really having that outline, or like setting like wildly unrealistic outcomes and just these atypical, taking like really atypical results and then creating an entire marketing campaign and making this false promise that if you take my coaching, you're gonna achieve what this person did, who was like maybe an outliner, whether it's like some money, like a certain amount of money, or just like this complete life transformation. And I just think that that is misleading in the marketing
Mm.
aspect of it. And it is actually considered a deceptive trade practice. Another one that we go into in the handbook is about the MLM model. So much of the coaching industry is coaches coaching coaches to be coaches.
Hmm.
They're no longer selling their craft. They're helping other people sell that craft, sell their
Yeah.
craft. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and there's a lot of like affiliate marketing involved in that, and just the way that it's set up. And it's not clear cut because it doesn't follow the rigid sort of framework of that classic MLM model or the pyramid scheme. But there's so many commonalities, and we go into that in the handbook of what they have in common, the
Mm.
MLM type of
Yeah.
models. And according to consumer rights advocates, MLMs are deeply unethical. And that is a subject for debate. Some people might not agree with that. And that's fine. I guess you could do MLMs ethically, even though it's very difficult to do that because the model itself is like based on this kind of pyramid. Um, and we know that 99% of people lose money in that
Mm.
kind of a financial model. So the coaching industry has this issue around that I've
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah. It's to me, it feels like that is an area that regulation could be really beneficial because you think about industries, especially in the sort of helping so-called professions,
Hmm.
they are regulated usually the to protect vulnerable people or people who are if there's a power imbalance. And it strikes me a lot of the time that the coaches programs.
The
Um,
coaches coaching coaches how to coach coaches.
that's it. Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah, a lot of the time they are marketing rather than they're marketers rather than coaches, and so they're essentially like the old business model of training training people how to build a business, teaching people how to build a business, and they will build a business teaching people how to build a business. And it's like there's no depth to the thing. It just carries on, everybody just spreading out, which I suppose is the multi-level marketing structure.
Yes.
um, and in the marketing to people who are likely to sign up for a multi-level marketing type program, there is a sense of vulnerability that you often see because they will go for the you can make money quickly, or you like are you in a situation where you're struggling to make ends meet, and actually there's a vulnerability there because you're taking advantage of people who probably on the whole don't have the money to just be throwing into these things, and you're promising the world and you're not going to deliver it because there's not enough pie in a multi-level marketing structure. So yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that feeds into the second part of it, which is the sales, unethical sales practices. So
Yeah.
scarcity tactics, inducing kind of this FOMO in people, um, the sales scripts that overcome objections,
Have you got any
where,
examples of that?
oh
How that might
gosh,
sound?
the overcoming objections,
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
Um, if somebody says like, oh, I really can't afford that right now. It's not within my budget. And then the person on the other end says, well, what do you like? Think of what you have to lose, framing it in such a way where if you don't sign up for the program, you're actually losing rather
Mm,
than gaining something. So you think you're saving your money, but in the long run, it's going to be a net loss for you because you're going to be able to make so much more money in the future. This is kind of like it's going to be a higher return on investment. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if I could do that right now. And they're like, you know, I people who feel worthy of themselves that they invest like this, you know. And if you can't have success unless you really want it and you really believe in yourself. You know, it's this like manipulation,
mm,
like psychological manipulation. And if a person is in a vulnerable state and they're already feeling, you know, insecure in their way. I mean, and this happens. You can assume that if somebody is pursuing coaching, there is a reason for it. Maybe they want to overcome, right? And they kind of get baited into it. You know,
mm.
there's the based on questions. And there, I mean, there's just so many examples of it, similar
Yeah.
examples of it.
Yeah, that's great examples there. It reminds me of on websites if you the kind of opt-in pops up and you say no thanks, and it's like, oh, you basically want to kill your family, do you?
Yeah,
Like, well, no,
exactly.
but I also don't want to sign up for this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me. It's like when it pops up and you're like, say 15% by subscribing, and the no button is like, yes, I'm in, and then the no button says, no, I don't want to save money right now, or
That's
something
yeah,
like
so often
that.
you see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and even if you can sort of treat it as a, oh, it's ridiculous, it still does something within you of like, oh, I'm a bit of a loser, am I? You know,
Yeah,
like,
it absolutely does. Yeah.
and as you say, if people are in a vulnerable and that's an interesting thing within the coaching industry as well, where I suppose there's this murky line between coaching and therapy, especially in the minds of because it's something I'm always mindful of when I'm talking to prospective coaching clients, where they might have misconceptions about what coaching is and assume that it has a therapeutic angle to it. And it's kind of getting clear on, no, this is what it is. It's kind of for the, it's future focused. Like we might sort of talk about your past a little bit if it's useful, but that's not the focus of it. But then I think, especially in the unregulated industry of coaching, where there are coaches who haven't been trained, they have no sort of official training or background, they also might assume, well, I can give a bit of therapy a go here and help people with mental health stuff. And I was talking to someone a while ago about the danger of kind of the lived experience angle, where people assume because they've been through something, they can then help everybody else who has the same label or whatever it might be. And that is a really dangerous position to take, I think. Like, can be slippery slope.
Yeah, you're highlighting one of the main issues in the coaching industry is that coaches are a lot of, because it's so unregulated, there's such a low bar of entry. We have people who just they just don't have the skills, they don't have the training, they don't have the education, they don't have the qualifications for it. And I've noticed that in conversations when I've said that, the response has been, well, there are a lot of, you know, therapists who do have the training and qualifications and they suck. They just like they can't perform just because they have the qualification. And I think that's a valid point. I don't think that a qualification or a degree um, gives anyone an authority, right? Then but there's something baseline about it that at least at least you know that there's some kind of standardized
Mm.
procedure, and that's not going to eliminate the problem of unqualified, credentialed therapists or whatever else. But at least it will mitigate it. At least there's something that is set as a standard. And then more importantly, when those standards are not met, at least you know that there's going to be some kind of consequences for that.
Yeah.
So, and it's not to instill fear in people, but it's to instill integrity. You
Yeah.
know, this like baseline integrity of like I need to do my job right. I need to do it well. I need to care about what I'm doing. I can't just willy-nilly say whatever I want, do whatever I want, and then just get away with it. Because then we have a grifting problem, which is just another big issue in the coaching industry. So how do we resolve those issues without making people without having this like punitive kind of approach of you're going to be punished if you don't follow the rules. We're not kids, you know, we're not going to punish each like assuming we can critically think our own way through it and take responsibility for ourselves. That is the ideal, is if like that responsibility we take that upon ourselves to do a good job because we care about our craft,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
So that it's not
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
enforcing, like it's not an outside authority. It's a self-regulated kind of industry. And I believe that it can be there. It can get there.
Mm.
Um, but there's a grifter problem.
Mm.
So what are we going to do about it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose in the licensed medical professions and therapeutic industries, you've got procedures for reporting, and you've got place as a consumer of that. You've got a place you can go if you're not happy with the standards that have been there. That is part of like the vision for ethics for coaching, is that kind of anonymous reporting or anonymous feedback kind of angle. I don't have you set that up yet, or is that sort of a
No,
future?
yeah, that was a future thing. We haven't set that up yet. I think it's a really complicated thing to set up.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah, something I suppose you've got to get it right, haven't you? Because it could also be
yeah,
a forum for people to take out personal vendettas against people that they don't like. Or
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, there needs to be a system of checks and balances in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea was if somebody did have a complaint, we would have some kind of like mediation process
Okay. Yeah.
where, you know, we'd reach out to the coach and say, listen, this issue is coming up, especially if it's like multiple people,
Mm.
and then at least give them an opportunity to repair the relationship.
That
And this is
sounds great.
like the kind of the transformative sort of justice angle, which is not the opposite of a punitive measure, like to just not punish people right away. Because I personally don't believe in that. Um, but you know, it's a vision, it's a grand vision. Who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows if it's gonna get picked up? Who knows if people are gonna want it? And they do great. If not, well,
I really
we
like
tried.
that. That's a really good idea. And
Yeah, we
if
wanted to
you,
just put a model there.
yeah,
Like, how are we gonna implement this?
absolutely. I mean, yeah, it would require quite a lot of, uh, yeah, time and energy and commitment, I would imagine, to actually implement that, especially as you say, with the number of grifters there are. You'd have your work cut out for you. Yeah. And when you say
Yeah.
grifters, what are you thinking of when you use that word?
Um, I'm thinking of again the someone who just has absolutely no business doing giving any kind of advice, mental health advice, business advice. They just simply don't have the skills, the training, the education, and they pretend they do because they create some kind of compelling emotional story about something that they've overcome, and that is qualification enough. That it's like an appeal to authority, where they position themselves as an authority, as an expert, because they've gone through it, and then maybe helped some people along the way. But who knows if that's correct as well? I mean, it's just made up. It's just
Mm.
at best, it's just kind of embellished,
Yeah.
right? They kind of like embellish it. They make it really compelling. And if you look at every kind of these like big self-help gurus, who I critique, um, every single one of them has a very emotionally compelling origin story. And it just fits so neatly into this box of like this transformation, overnight transformation. And it just it life doesn't work like that. Growth doesn't work like that. I mean, it's story selling. It's
Mm.
story and there is a storytelling component in marketing, which I think is very valid. Um, because it gives an opportunity to connect with consumers on a more human level. But when that storytelling becomes the main sort of like focal point of why you are an authority on a subject matter, then it's going into the grifting territory, because to be an authority and an expert, I mean, you got to have a certain baseline level of credentials for business, for mental health, and that doesn't exist in coaching. So it's anyone can just claim to have an authority and appear to be very competent when actually it's just confidence.
Mm.
So that is the main appeal. And they use a lot of these like aspirational marketing values, you know, being your higher self. Again, those are not bad values. It's the way that they're used to manipulate and to
Yeah.
exploit. So that's a fine line, right? And it's not clear cut. And I guess unless somebody has really studied it extensively the way I have, and the way some of the people that I was working and other kind of like wellness grifter debunkers out there, we really study this, and then you can spot it. You can spot the red flags. And my hope was to help other consumers, like empower other consumers, because we can't cancel people. We can't tell these people not to exist. We can't, it's, they're free to do whatever. And I think the best approach is to simply educate consumers, which we are. We are all consumers, right? And the grifters grift each other. And in fact, statistically, you're more likely to get grifted when you yourself or have grifted.
Mm.
You know,
That's interesting.
the
Yeah.
grifters grift each other, so they are just as much of a victim to
Mm.
this. And the problem is so systemic, and it's larger, and it speaks to the wellness industry as a whole, the spiritual marketplace as a whole. I mean, it's like a big umbrella. So everyone is kind of impacted by this. And the way out of that is to simply have the education around it, have the awareness around it. So that's another one of I guess the mission of EFC is to promote consumer awareness so that people understand their rights, and they take a stand. They have an informed approach
Yeah.
to what they're buying,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
great. Yeah.
everyone should, I
Absolutely.
think.
And be able to, it's that awareness and ability to see the grift and to see or hear certain phrases or certain things that are like, that's not sitting well. But I mean, maybe we need to just, when we recognize a grifter, send them to an island, and they can all grift each other on Grift Island. And
Grift Island, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And
Yeah.
there's a, so when you talk about
And,
that,
I'm
oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry to interrupt because I put a pin in this so I don't forget because
Okay.
I liked your question of what is the what constitutes a grifter. The other part of it is a huge financial ask. Their financial, it's not chump change. It's not pocket change. It's not the classic swindler, like the old school swindler we would see in movies. They just kind of like pickpocket you and they just
Hmm.
disappear. This is an entire like an operation and it's thousands of dollars, right? It's like
Mm.
10K and beyond of an investment um, that they're asking for. They're not just it's and there can be smaller scale, but I think the smallest is probably like I don't know a grand, and it's just the other aspect of it that is so problematic for me that really stands out. We can talk about this if you want. The inflated pricing, the
Hmm.
just like outrageous pricing. Like, what are you actually selling for
Yeah.
this price? It doesn't make sense to me. Um, but that is
Yeah.
another like element of it too. So it's like this nice story and then this like appeal to authority, very charismatic kind
Hmm.
of personality, and then they ask for a lot of money
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're making this promise of if you invest in this, you're gonna be like me. You're gonna have the
Exactly.
aspirations that I have and I've achieved, whether it's inner peace, whether it's this great relationship, whether it's, a multi-million dollar empire.
Mm. That's yeah, it's all linked, isn't it? So that the story, as you say, like obviously marketing thrives on story. That's how we emotionally connect to things and find a sense of meaning in them. But what this speaks to me about is the fact that actually coaching is the reverse of this. It's about the client. It's about, what is it that they are wanting to come to coaching for? It's not about you as the coach. Like you should be almost in the well, you should be kind of in the background. Your story might be interesting in little bits and pieces, but it's not the point. And so this is something else to coaching, as I understand coaching, as I've been trained as a coach. And yeah, so it's marketing, it's selling a story, and then it's selling the belief that we all, I suppose it's a wishful thinking that we have that a story is true and that it's that simple to transform your life and live in peace and happiness and prosperity from here on in. Um, and actually, the only reason that person has that prosperity is because they're grifting people like you. And, you know, the cycle
Yeah.
continues. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And you're touching on a point that we've circling back to the handbook. Um, I think it's under professionalism, but it's scope of practice, which is really knowing where your strengths are as well as your limitations as a professional. Um, and not going beyond that um, because it's doing a disservice, not just to the client, but also to yourself. Because if there is awareness around the limitations, then you can maybe go and, get qualifications for it, get
Mm,
a little bit more training for it, if that's what you want. But at
quite.
least to
Yeah.
have that awareness of it and scope of practice is so, so, so important. And I think it's completely ignored
Mm.
in the coaching industry. I see that as a big problem.
Yeah. I think like a green flag to me would be asking a potential coach a question and them saying, I don't know, I'll get back to you on that. Like, the humility to say, I don't know, that's beyond my scope of expertise and knowledge, is a point of trust. It's something that actually is an anchor for trust in my book. But yeah, you don't see
Yeah.
that very often. You see people just bullshitting and trying to convince you that they know
Yeah.
everything. And one of
Yeah.
the interesting things in that professionalism, talking about the FTC, again, the Federal Trade Commission, Code of Regulations, a business that makes earning claims is required by law to provide proof, and failure to do so is considered an unfair and deceptive act or practice. So, yeah, that again is something you see constantly. Is like, I'll show you how to make I don't know, whatever it is, like 7-figure business within 10 weeks or whatever. Like this,
Yeah.
I make this much money, etc. It's like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Income claims in general. If you see an income claim in somebody's Instagram bio, run.
Yeah.
Run in the other direction because that's ethical and professional, like real professionals, they don't do that. They just don't do that
They
in any
don't. No,
industry. No,
no.
they don't. They don't. Just flat
Yeah,
out, they don't.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So the second pillar is safety. Anything
Yeah.
to pick up on in that?
The safety is about emotional and psychological, minimizing emotional and psychological harm, whether it's it in the marketing or sales aspect of it, or the actual coaching within the coaching relationship itself. So you touched on it a little bit in the beginning, that my cult, kind of my cult education that I'm doing, this has to do with that as well, like the ways of coercive control and psychological manipulation. um, Financial exploitation also goes into that. So it's the way that critical thinking is discouraged, the way that people are kind of walked out of their um, conscience, their critical thinking. Um, a lot of emotional bypassing, a lot of spiritual bypassing. For example, if somebody says that they're not feeling good about something, something's not sitting right with them, it feels off for them, they just like get gaslit, right? Like your vibe is not high enough, or you just don't have the self-awareness yet. You just don't have the skills and the tools yet. And I'm teaching you that. So you don't want to just like fail at this, because you got to keep going. You got to, like, instead of validating their emotions and listening to them, there's a lot of like gaslighting that happens. There's a lot of like oh gosh, thought terminating cliches, these phrases that are super catchy, and they get weaponized in a way to, again, shut down that critical thinking aspect of it. Telling someone everything happens for a reason,
Mm.
right? Like it's everything's happening for your highest good. If you're having a bad experience in this program, if something is not right, then there's a reason for it. You have to find that high. This is your kind of test, right? This is the universe testing you. This is where you showing you this is where you need to heal, right? That's like
Hmm.
some serious gaslighting. And then those catchy phrases or triggers are showing you where you're still not free. Everything's happening for your highest good. The universe is going to have your back no matter what. I mean, these are just these
Unless you quit
statements that
my
don't,
program.
right, unless you quit the program.
Yeah.
Yeah. then you might get punished. Then what kind of message are you sending out,
Yeah.
right? Um, yeah, that's bad. That's just gaslighting. That's just manipulation. When you're kind of blame shifting on the
Mm.
person. The person's kind of, and I've been through that, and I know a lot of people have.
Yeah.
They feel so gaslit, extremely gaslit by the industry.
Yeah. I was watching the Escaping Twin Flames documentary.
Oh my
Um,
God, that's wild.
yeah, and that just reminded me of that. Is it the mirror technique that they use? That they, anytime someone has a question or like an issue with something that they're doing, they were like, you use the mirror technique, and it basically turns the thing on yourself, and you have to take responsibility for whatever thing that you're feeling, however valid that might be. And again,
Yeah,
within coaching, actually, the safety aspect, you need to know, okay, if you have a concern about anything that I say or ask or anything, then you should know what you can do with that, and you know that I will not judge you, and there's a pathway through that, and we'll collaborate together. But actually, it's that power imbalance, which is not a
yes,
coaching partnership. You know, a coaching partnership is a partnership, it's a collaboration. But you
right.
see this power guru and follower
Mm-hmm.
dynamic so
Mm-hmm.
often.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And that happens all the time. And especially on social media, because social media, the way that it's designed is to kind of have that authority, like the influencer is the one always speaking at their followers.
Yeah.
There's no there's very little conversation. I mean, maybe in the comments, but there is this like parasocial component to it where we feel like we really know the person, we really know this influencer, and we trust them, and
And it's
we're
those
not we're
kinds
not going
of
to think,
terms, isn't it? An influencer. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, you already
yeah,
know.
what are you influencing me to do?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. It's tricky. It's a tricky territory to navigate.
It really is. Yeah. And I think the online world makes it, because there's a difference between coaching as I've seen it in the physical realm, in person, when people are actually in the same room, and it's totally different
Yeah.
kettle of fish, really, to this, what I see as really marketing led coaching. And it's the
Yeah, that's
marketing
a great way
first. Yeah.
to put it.
Mm.
Marketing-led coaching.
Yeah. Inclusivity is the third one.
Yeah, this one it's a little bit more nebulous, because it speaks to the larger systemic issue of the power imbalances that exist in our established social structures, the way that we are practicing it today, where the wealth and power and privilege is disproportionately allocated to the select few up top. And it's really about um, challenging that within the coaching industry and making coaching more accessible for people, because therapy itself is so expensive for most people.
Mm.
It's a privilege to have therapy. And coaching, I think, was a way to make it more like receiving help, make receiving help a little bit more accessible.
Mm.
And with the inflated prices and just like the outrageous financial commitments, I think we got lost in
Mm.
the sauce of it all, where the people who don't have the financial means for it are probably the ones who need it the most. Um, and I mean, everyone can benefit from coaching. That's not the question. But it's like, who are we catering to as an industry? who is receiving these services, and are we inclusive in that? Do we have representation of different identities in there? Is your pricing model, is it accessible? Do you have a range of maybe services that you can offer to a variety of people? And the argument is always that I've heard, and I think it's a valid argument. You identify your niche, and within that, you know who you're serving, you know their socioeconomic status, you know their capability, and you market to them. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
Um, that's standard marketing. I mean, any kind of like luxury brand or whatever is they do that, right? Um, but I think it comes down to this conflict of interest maybe that we didn't get a chance to touch on, but it's a helping profession, right?
Mm.
You're not a retail store, right? You're a helping professional.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just the coaching industry that does this. They're not, it's like this, the industry is not the worst of them, right? Again, it's like a more systemic issue. And the idea is that within coaching, we can maybe change that a little bit, improve that a little bit, modify that a little bit, and utilize more of this, anti-oppressive framework
Mm.
that incorporates a lot of the values around um, accessibility, around inclusivity. And it doesn't just have to do, this is not just about race, right? It's not just about like having a representation of like a certain demographic people. It can be anything. It can be applied to anything. For example, if you're a financial coach, right? I see financial coaches, for example, talking about like how they're manifesting their abundance. And that's a form of gaslighting, right? Because the person who is not able, it is not like, it has to work and I work multiple jobs to just feed their family. Like they get caught into that trap of like, I need to manifest my abundance when actually they really need real like financial advice, right?
Mm.
This not this like manifesting law of attraction. That would be considered an anti-oppressive framework, right? Where you're changing your language a little bit to be a little bit more inclusive. You're not talking about manifesting abundance. What does it mean to have money, save money, spend money, right? You're like actually giving people some practical tools and advice. Um,
But then you need to actually know what you're doing.
Exactly. Same with like health coaches, right? There's this like some health coaches come out with statements around like a disease is some kind of like spiritual gift that you need to overcome. And for people who are really struggling, like they feel gaslit.
Mm.
It's confusing. It's dangerous even, right?
And
Because
that's
within that, there's a lot of medical misinformation
so
in
much.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
I was
know?
just reading your latest post on your Substack, and um, that's about radicalization. And it seems like a post COVID phenomenon of this just blurring of all sorts of lines. And as you say, like how the financial coaching field can blur into spirituality, and same with health coaching, and all of these things end up with very fluffy, non-anchored language that doesn't actually
Yeah.
say anything really. It doesn't. There's no there really.
Yeah, yeah. And when you really peel back the layers of that, you find that there's just so many implicit biases. There's like so much like stereotypes. There's so many social norms in there that really just they perpetuate that problem of our society as a whole, which is,
Mm.
we have like such a power imbalance. We have systemic inequality. We have wealth. We have a huge wealth gap, right? So when you really peel back the layers, the inclusivity is about like, well, how can I mitigate that? What can I do with my business? You don't have to go out there and like give free services and, martyr yourself for it. That's not what we're suggesting. But I believe that everybody can do something within their own capability, within their own sphere of influence to just mitigate it a little bit, not
Mm.
solve the problem, but reduce the harm in some
Yeah.
capacity. I think it takes a lot of creative thinking to do that, a lot of innovative thinking. Um, but that's
I think
presumably
that's
with the
the
fun part, right? That's the
exactly. I was
fun
going to
part.
say
It's supposed
that's
to be fun.
this is the bit that brings me to life. It's like because I do a
Yeah,
I offer like one off calls that are choose your own price and like no strings attached. Just
I love that.
after the
Yeah,
session, just drop me a donation if you can, and if you can't, don't worry about it. And there's a real span to that. And the great thing about it as well is I do that instead of because a lot of coaches will do like discovery calls, free discovery calls that always feel when I've been on them with people, it always feels like the sales pitch is coming. And actually, by making it a choose your own price session, it's like it is its own thing. And then if you want to go
yeah.
on and work with me more, you can. We can discuss those options, but it
That's
just
a
feels
great
like
example
a
of a
safe thing.
client-centered model.
And I love coming up with stuff like that because it's like, yeah, rebelling
Creative, yeah.
against the system in some way. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh man, I could talk about this all day long, but we will
I
have to
know.
close it off. Is there any kind of anything you haven't covered that you'd like to just pick up on before we finish?
Um, no, I had just outlined the three issues that I wanted to touch on, which was the inflated pricing, the manipulative and deceptive trade practices, and then the lack of skills and training and qualifications that leads to the grifting. Um, but I think that's kind of we covered it. We covered
Mm.
a broad
We've gone
range of things.
through a lot of
We
stuff.
did
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. And yeah, I suppose just to sort of tie it in a bow, like what do you hope that ethics for coaching will accomplish? Is there anything? Yeah.
I hope that some coaches, and here's an opportunity. I'm going to put the word out to your listeners. If anyone's a coach, if anyone is interested in participating in this effort, there are a lot of moving parts to it, depending on your capability with time and whatnot. But there are elements to it that I think if we can find the right people who want to take this forward in terms of like coaches. I think, like I said, coaches really need to take this initiative on. So if you're interested in being involved, if you go to the website, volunteer. So on the about, under the about section, the volunteer coordinator, communications outreach coordinator, consumer education coordinator, and then the coaching and education and training coordinator. So anyone can look at that. And if you'd like to be a part of that, just reach out to the email on the website and we'll set you up. We have all of the systems in place. The steering committee, we did a really great job of just kind of creating that system, and it just needs to get handed off to somebody who's willing to take on some of the key responsibilities in there. So yeah, just definitely reach out. We have a mailing list. Our mailing list has been sad and kind of abandoned recently, but there was a once a month newsletter that we were putting out, just kind of covering the trends in the coaching industry, some issues that we're seeing, and some resolutions also that we're seeing, and other podcasters or other creators who are talking about this. So it was kind of like a general roundup.
Mm.
We haven't been keeping up with that, but sign up for it. I hope that we will be able to continue this effort. Like I said, we built the foundation. Now it just needs a rollout.
Yeah.
And who knows how long it's going to take. There's really no end point. Coaching industry is not going anywhere. I think it's going to actually get even more popular. It's a booming industry, and I don't see it becoming regulated in any official capacity. It doesn't quite fit the mold of that, but who knows? Who knows? And I don't even know if it should be regulated in that capacity. I don't know. I don't have the
Yeah.
answers to that. I have ideas around it, but that's just my personal opinion.
Hmm.
But we'll see. I mean, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that comes back to
Yeah.
what you said at the beginning about these conversations just need to be had. Because I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know the answers either, but I just know that there are issues that need to be talked about, and we can sort of
Yeah.
creatively come up with options together and see how we go. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the conversations are happening more and
Yeah.
more that I'm seeing. So I
Yeah.
think that's great. I think that's a good start.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And thank you too for taking an interest in it and extending that invite to talk about it.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Yeah. I knew as soon as I saw that, well, the ethics for coaching website, I was like, yes, I need to talk to someone here. And
Yeah,
then looking at
yeah.
your Instagram and your Substack and listening to you on podcasts, I was like, yeah, I'm vibing here.
Great.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's great. And best place for people to go and find you online?
I'm online at Seek with Sarah. That's my Instagram handle. I'm not very active on Instagram these days, but I do have my Substack, which under that, The Conscious Revolution, I have my podcast there as well as the Substack newsletter. I'm a little bit more active on there. But yeah, just at Seek with Sarah, you can find me and follow along for the journey.
Excellent. Well, Marguerite,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Annie. Great talking to you.